Okay, this is going to be the last video on the subject of how to practice your sword and the parity it has with your other skill sets, particularly in this case. We started with um, Kempo, a general term, and we decided to talk about karate because it's very under. Everybody has a basic understanding of that to some degree. Okay, okay. So when you're doing something like breaking a guard down, okay, it's the same point. It's not a question so much of, practicing this 500 times as understanding how you're going to catch the person, okay? And as you're moving, okay, as my feet are coming, how many times this is going to come down to attack the guard, having my hands in the right position as I do that, and taking advantage of when that person is going backwards to deliver something that is a little bit more devastating, okay? This is an example of Kazushi. A lot of the Kazushi you understand is in grappling. And yeah, it's the same idea, okay? If we're in a grapple and maybe I do a thumb to your throat, to pull you into a position, I can feel that immediately because we have tactile relationship when we're grappling, okay? That's why grapplers tend to do well in these contests. Grappling is a very tactile oriented exercise as compared to when you hit, where you have to make some judgments about where the person's going to be compared to where you're going to be in process. Or when you're cutting with a sword, or even a long weapon like a naginata, a halberd, or an odachi, a long sword. You have to make those arrangements based on where you figure your actions will make the person be when you're delivering your strike. Okay? So, with that said, you can see examples of this. You could actually see when you had these bizarro matches where a Tai Chi guy would get knocked to the ground by a boxer in a few seconds. Some of those Tai Chi guys would actually hit the guard down. They had some concept of the idea that, well, I can hit his guard down, but they didn't know how to hit. And they didn't know how to really use that, okay? So when you're practicing that, it's understanding how to use your proper weapons, okay? How to be in position to do that properly, and what effect that will have that will allow you to continue your pursuit and deliver a damaging blow or a damaging technique, whether it be grappling, kicking, whatever the case may be. Okay? So when you practice these draws and with the sword and these forms, they don't really have much purpose beyond giving someone a basic orientation, okay, of distance and what they may encounter that way. Ditto for when you're practicing the cuts. You practice those things, but you can understand how to cut a certain way, how to punch a certain way, strike a certain way in 5 minutes, okay? The real training is how you position yourself to make that effective. And that's really what you want to focus on with this, okay? Now, I know it's confusing to some of us because when we do practice how to hit something properly or cut something properly, we're very concerned with our body dynamics to make that happen. That is another part of practice. Okay, you perfect that way. Um, the body dynamics are the same. And the more that you internalize them, the less visible they will be. Okay? Swinging this with my arm is always going to be less effective than using my body weight, tensing my core, and rotating. Okay? But doing that, okay, is just a small part. Okay? Related to just understanding that this movement, okay, is done a certain way. So you focus on the movement when you're doing the cut, the hit, whatever the case may be. If I'm doing a shuto, you don't want your elbow out here, right? You never want your elbow out here. Okay, it's a target, it's a bad habit, okay? So you try to keep your elbow here, okay? You try to use rotation this way. If you're too far this way, okay, that's a bad habit. That's weak. You can feel that. So let's talk about how to look for these things. Always look at everything you do, every self-defense scenario from both sides, omote and ura, okay? You and your opponent. How would you see it as your opponent attacking you? How would you see it, attacking with this, with my arm here, okay? And somebody pushing pressure here. You'd notice in a second that you have no strength here, okay? That teaches you to come from here and use your body's rotation. From here, it's not a big deal. If you want to come straight, come this way. Just like if you were going to cut with this here, okay, cutting through, okay, once I make this movement, I would bring the weapon that way. I'd bring it straight, okay? As opposed to, okay, if I'm lopping, then I would come through here and just maybe at the last second thread about this much through this area, okay? Knowing that you have your collarbone here, which can be broken first. Remember we talked about this, okay? You can break that and then cut through, or just coming around it, okay? So same thing applies when you're hitting, okay? You can come straight in, you can come around, okay? You have your ura shuto, okay? Coming this way. A lot of the strength of that coming from your back shoulder. So you want to look at those things, but you don't want to get so preoccupied with them that you don't understand the act of physical interaction during a combat scenario, creating a cyber chain where you're seeing all their alternatives and all the things you can do and setting up for it, okay, is the training, okay? And the sword, because you cannot get cut with it, will teach you how to do that as perfectly as possible. So by the time you're dealing with somebody throwing punches at you, trying to grapple with you, you have a sense of perspective, and it doesn't seem so difficult to overcome, okay? If I'm here, somebody's throwing punches, and I'm thinking I have to hit those punches away, that's not a very easy proposition to deal with, even for a skilled fighter. If I'm fighting a boxer who's throwing very fast punches, and I'm not at a distance where I'm just outside of those punches and I can just track and move when he moves any part of his body out of that plane, okay? And I'm trying to just pick his punches off, okay? But if I have something in my hands like this, and as he punches, just the mere act of putting this out where his hand is going to land, okay? It gives me a lot of security, okay? So why can't I do that with just my hands, okay? If those punches are coming, I'm at the right distance, okay, I can do that. I can use parts of my body that way, provided I understand distancing and timing, okay? Those are always the elements, okay, regardless of the weapon or skill set and your intent, okay? You have to learn how to do things with intent, okay? Aggressively and explosively. So that's what you want to focus on. Do not get into this situation where I come here, cutting here, and then if I come here, do I bring it here? Or, do I want to come more here? And, as I take that step, I have to tilt how much, don't focus on those things unnecessarily, okay? Make it reflexive. Make it so that you understand when your weight comes forward to a certain point, okay, you're using gravity, okay? Once your head and your shoulders come over your plane where you are establishing a presence, okay? Once it's past that, okay, then you have gravity, okay, coming down. We use gravity a lot when we're hitting, okay? If we're coming down here, if we come here, that doesn't have any power because my weight's here. If I come here, it makes all the difference in the world, okay? The most I ever broke was 6 cinder blocks together with an elbow strike, okay? In order to make that break, which will teach you everything you really need to know about hitting, I knew I would either shatter my elbow and be more of a cripple than I am today, or my weight was going to have to go through those bricks, and you will know that, okay? Use that. That's what you want to focus on, okay? Where your weight is, and then, the speed comes with the fluidity and explosiveness, which become part of your intent. You're using your breathing, your demeanor, okay, your willfulness, all together to be effective in that situation. So that's the best advice I can give on this topic. When you practice your movement dynamics, just be patient with yourself. And if you have questions, just test them out. Ask yourself, if I'm hitting the bag this way, what's happening versus this way, okay? If I pull the shoulder back a little more, what's happening versus if I just come this way, okay? All the ways that people punch, none of them are so complicated that you can't learn them quickly. Sure, you may choose to master a couple of those ways. There's nothing wrong with that. It takes 5 minutes to get a decent jab and 5 years to get a pretty good, respectable jab, and maybe 15 years to become so good with your jab that you have real expert level, okay? And by the way, I'm going to conclude this with a request, and for anybody watching this video, it should be on YouTube. If you want to understand how distance and timing work, watch the heavyweight undisputed that just took place between Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois, okay? If you watch Usyk, you will understand everything that this video has been trying to explain. Okay, you notice, watch him compared to, watch the Edward Berlanga fight that was a week before, the middleweight, okay? And you notice his opponent, Shiraz, I think it is, good fighter. But, people like Dwyer are saying expert fighter. No. And you know what? Watch where he lines up. You will notice that most fighters, Shiraz included, he doesn't really control his distance when he's pursuing a fighter. And he's close. He's dangerously close. He's unaware close. He's not aware of that. Compare that when you watch Usyk. Usyk is always just outside the range, so that if Daniel just throws a punch directly where he's standing, okay, he will not catch him. That gives you more visibility about what's happening because you have more distance this way. And you can, if you can control your distance like a master, if you see him, anything he does to come forwards, you can just parrot that and make a movement angular wise to offset that, so that you see him here, he's trying to set you up for this. The minute you see this, you're here, which means his punch will come here. So if you want to counter him, you can anticipate that. Watch the difference. Watch Shiraz and watch Usyk, and you will understand how important distancing and timing is. Okay? That's my exhortation to anybody watching this video. Okay,